Hi, this is Dark Shades, and today's video is about making wrong choices with regard to relationships. Well, I should say I'm a connoisseur in that, but I don't want to say that really, because I do believe that it's not really a wrong choice. I believe everybody that comes into your life comes in there for a reason, but there is a way of getting into relationships that you would have been better not getting into them. A lot of them have to do with your self-esteem at the time. A lot of them have got to do with allowing yourself to be chosen. And sometimes it's got to do with where you, what emphasis and what's important to you at the time. Now, when you're looking for a relationship, you have to, well, I don't like using the word have to, but it's important that you know exactly what you want. Now, we hear this all the time on these self-help videos. Know what you want, and you can be focused, but sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes you think you know what you want in that particular time, but as time passes, your needs change. Now, what I might want today might be somebody who can help me around the home. I can go to the movies with, we can go out for a meal. And then down the line, my needs might have changed and it might be something else. And it might be something that person can't even develop himself or cannot even build himself up to where I have, because sometimes we get into relationships and people evolve at different times and different levels. And so if you choose a relationship where the person isn't you've just taken him for the immediate comfort, then it'd be very difficult for that person to reach where you want to reach if you've now decided that phase has passed. Now, sometimes you can get yourself into relationships. You can, depending on where you've met the person, and it can be just seems so easy at the time. Sometimes just the rapport, talking. I remember when I was watching Love Island and they were saying, oh, we really get on really well. We have a lot to talk about. But when I'm listening from a viewer's point of view, they didn't talk about anything much. And I believe that being in that confined space on that villa, anything would have been a conversation. They could talk about anything. It didn't mean that that relationship would survive outside. And that's what happens. Sometimes you meet somebody and they seem to tick the boxes in that particular time of your life. You might just want somebody to make you laugh, or, based on your last relationship, if that person used to go out a lot, you might want somebody that doesn't go out a lot. And so when you meet somebody who doesn't go out a lot, you think, oh, great, this is what I want. But then you realise that there's other things that are missing, and much more profound things than the superficial things you've placed some value on at the beginning of the relationship. You also have a situation where it's when you're making your choices, sometimes it's based on going out. You meet somebody at a party or a dance. It's dark. You might have had a drink. You feel kind of warm and fuzzy. Somebody holds you and they hold you really nicely, and you're enjoying the dance, and they've got that husky voice and it's whispering in your ear, and they're smelling good and they're asking you questions and you're answering, and you seem to be on par. And you're there and they'll say, oh, can I have your number? And in that moment, because you're on a totally different plane, in that moment, you'll probably say, oh, let me have your phone, I'll give you my number, or you give me your number. And you give that person your number, and you finish your dance, and then you go home. Now, in the following few days, you're more rational, you're together, and that person calls you, and I don't know how they'll address you. They might just say, hi babes, or hi, this is so and so. And you're there talking, and you might be talking about the dance. And because you're talking about the dance and that you were both there, it comes like you've got something in common. And so you rap, and then the next day you might say, well, not the next day, the next few times you speak to him, you find that you might be able to talk about, something on the news. And then you might talk about something at work. And all of these little things, and he might be saying to you at the same time, oh, I really liked you. I love the way you felt. I loved dancing with you. I really enjoyed being in your company. You're such a nice lady. And you've got all of these kind of artificial scenarios going on at a point when you're not really in the right frame of mind. You're still in that state of euphoria from the night. Oh, you've met, you tell your mate, oh, I met this guy, he really danced nice. I had such a lovely time. And he's called me 3 times, and he's texted me, and we have such a good rapport. Next thing you know, the guy is saying, I'd like to meet you. And when can I come and see you? And you're not really thinking at the point. You're saying, oh, you're just like, oh, he wants to come and see me. That's great. Now, not that he wants to come and see you. Should he be saying, I'd like to see you. Where would you like to meet? There's a difference. But when you meet somebody and immediately they want to come up and see you, that's a problem. Wouldn't it be absolutely wonderful if you met a guy and he said to you, I'd like you, let's go out for dinner and you can pop by my place just to see where I live. And then no strings attached, and then I can drop you home. Wouldn't that be nice? It doesn't happen that way though. It's for some reason, even if a man is legit, he's got to come to your yard, goodness know how long, before you can go to his, and even then you have to beg him to go to his yard. And, so what happens is, during all those phases, if you don't catch yourself and if you don't catch the relationship, you've made a bad choice, because what could happen is that if you allow that guy to come back to your place, that sets a precedent, because especially when you live alone and they come in and see where you live, they come and see you have a little space, especially if you don't have kids, next thing you want to know is that they're coming more frequently. And if you really like them, and if the vibes are good and there's some chemistry, you can end up with that person, not really knowing anything about that person. You've not seen where they live. You don't even probably have an address of where they live. You haven't met any members of the family. Meanwhile, while they're coming up your side, so your ends, they're meeting your friends and they're meeting your family. And yet you haven't met any of his family and his friends. And so what happens is, somewhere along the line, about 6 months maybe down the line, when you realise the relationship's becoming a bit repetitive and not much is changing, you start noticing things and start questioning things that you should have really caught in the beginning. So, for example, you might think, hey, you know what? I've been with this guy for like 6 months. I don't even know where he lives. Actually, I'm going to ask him where he lives. And so you say to him, you know, hun, I just realised, where do you live? I know you live in Stockwell, but I don't have an address. I've never been there. Can I come and see you next time? Can I come and see you next week? And at that point, after you spent 6 months with this guy, probably slept with him and everything, he says, oh no, I'm sorry, but I live with my brother, or I live with my kid's mother. There's nothing going on with us, but it's just not really convenient for you to come. That's why I haven't invited you over there. And so you kind of taken aback, and you're like, oh, so you live with your kid's mother? Yeah, but there's nothing in it, babes. It's just that, it's easier for me to live there. It's much cheaper. So already there's a big problem. So this is something what you haven't found out before. And what that does is it starts, from that point, the relationship starts taking a different turn, because now you feel a bit stupid, you feel a bit deceived, you start asking yourself, why didn't I ask the question before? Why didn't I go and see where he lived? Why don't I know more about this person? But I don't know if it's deliberate on the male part, but it's like they know a woman who is not necessarily vulnerable, but a woman who is enamored by them. Because if you're looking at a relationship with rose-coloured glasses, you take off all your rational thinking and you don't ask questions. And so you end up in a relationship and it's a wrong relationship, because by the time you've turned around and that's the first thing you've kind of picked up on, you start picking up on a lot of other things, because now your eyes are opened. Now you realise that you didn't make a right choice. And then it starts going downhill, and then the relationship ends. And sometimes relationships can start in different ways but end in the same way because of the same reason, because you haven't found enough up front. So in order to make the right choice next time, it's important to get the questions out of the way first. But somebody says to you, oh, after the initial, you can have that dance and you can have a good time at the night. But when he calls you the next day and says, oh, I'd love to come up and see you. I've been thinking about you all the time. I'd love to come up and see you. You can say to them, I'd love to see you too. When are you inviting me down? And see what the response is, and you can say things like, you can ask all this time when you are talking on the phone in the initial stages, find out the things that are important to you, instead of waiting down the line and discovering that, what you thought was not important is important. Is it important that he has children? Is it important that he lives with his mum? Is it important that his ex-girlfriend is allowing him to stay in the house? Is it important that he doesn't have a proper job? He's between jobs. Is it important that he borrowed his friend's car to come up to see you and he didn't tell you it wasn't his car? Is it important that he made out that the house he's living in is his house when it's really a rental accommodation? All of those things are important, because if you have something to offer and you're thinking about, building a life with someone, You want them to have something to offer too, so you can put together and the two of you can work together and build a relationship. But if you're going out with somebody under the premise that you think they have something when they don't, just because you haven't done your homework, then that's going to be a problem. And you've made another wrong choice. So it's easy to make wrong choices or bad choices, and I think each relationship teaches you something. But even though you're making wrong choices for different reasons, it's still important to get the fundamental questions out of the way, so that you know that whatever you're doing with a relationship or with someone is based on fact and it's based on evidence. You're not just going out with somebody and you don't know anything about them, or you're finding out about them 6 months down the line. It's bizarre. I remember, I always bring my personal experiences into my videos because I think it lends some integrity to what I'm saying. But my last fella, I was going out with him for a few years, but I met him actually not online, but you know those not like an online dating site, but I think it was Facebook I met him on, and we were going back and forth, and I thought I'd asked all the questions anyway. I remember him saying to me, I remember him wanting to meet me, and I also remember him saying, oh, you know, you're the type of woman I'd love to look after. And you know, as a woman, most men want a provider. You know, if you're going to respect a man, it's because he provides for you. And I know I know there's some kind of argument against that, but fundamentally, relationships that last is because the man provides for the woman. Anyway, he was saying, I'm going to provide for you, blah, blah, blah. And he said he lived in Harrow, you know, he had this house in Harrow, and then, you know, he worked in Watford, and, you know, he had a few children and stuff like that. But my point was, when he was talking to me, he was saying everything I wanted to hear. You know, he was talking about providing for me. He was talking about, you know, I wouldn't have to worry having tenants in the house anymore because he would make sure that I had enough money to cover things like that. And because he said everything I wanted to hear, I didn't feel no need to check it out. So, you know, a few months down the line, I remember, I don't know quite how, but a few months later, we ended up living together anyway. And yes, you know, he did provide for me, and he provided for me very well. And when I was planning our future, within that future was to sell my house, and hopefully he could sell his house and we could buy a house together. So I put my, you know, after about 6 or 7 months, I put my house on the market, and I said to him, are you going to be putting your house on the market? And he said to me, oh, I don't own the house. I said, what do you mean? I said, you know, when I was telling you in the beginning about us selling up and buying something together, you made me believe that that was a possibility. And now you're telling me that you don't own the house. It's a rental house. You're renting the house or something. And I hadn't done my homework, you see. I don't know how you research something like that. I mean, if somebody says they own a house, you've got no reason to doubt them. It's not like you can say to him or her, oh, well, you say you own a house, let me have a look at your mortgage papers. Can I have a look at your deeds, please? How can you do that? You can't. So if I believed when he said he owned that house. And so when I put my house on the market with the thought that he would be selling his and we'd be buying something together, and finding out that that wasn't the case, it kind of threw everything out of whack. I felt deceived, and from that I kind of found a lot of other what he likes to call omissions of the truth or distortions of the truth. Quite a few of them, enough to make me not feel that I'd made a wrong choice. So it is important to do your homework as best as you can. You can't cover everything, but there has to be a way. If I hadn't wanted to sell my house and do something together, oh, and another thing, he was talking about, oh, you know, he's getting married and stuff. The man wasn't even divorced. And that's another thing. You know, people can say things, and I'm not quite sure how you get the evidence in advance, but there has to be a way. So all I'm saying to you, girls, women, whoever, you know, making bad choices or making choices that teach you something in the future, you don't beat yourself up about it, but you must do your homework. You know, when somebody says something to you, you need to find out if it's true or not, especially if it's important to you and your future plans. So yeah, we're talking about making bad choices. Hopefully your next one will be a good choice because you've done your homework and you've done everything you need to do, and you're not taking anyone on face value. It's too easy to do that, and in a time where there's so many scams going on and people are out to get what they can from people. People aren't so sincere as they used to be back in the day. I know nobody's perfect, but you're finding people that are a bit more unscrupulous these days, and they're out to get what they can. So do be careful, and when you're dating, enjoy it, but keep your thinking cap on and make sure you ask the right questions. This is Dark Shades, over and out.